Okay, good morning. So we're at the bottom of 118b, and we have the last question by Rav Papa about the Yerusha of Eretz Yisrael and whether it was due to those who left Mitzrayim or those who came into the land of Israel. Um, Now we referred yesterday to there were that the inheritance of the tribe of Manasseh had 10 portions. So what is it talking about? Each volume chachashiv, if we're talking about the dependents, like the minor children, tuvahava, there's certainly more than 10 um, groups. Batich avos chachashiv, if we're talking about the clans, the major families, the paternal families, shitahava, there were only 6, as is written in the Torah. So where do we get the 10? So the answer is Leolam Batei Avos Chachashiv. We're talking about the paternal clans. B'hakamashmalan, but it also tells us there was an extra 4. Dibnos Slavchad natu chelik b'chara. They took the daughters of Slavchad took their father's firstborn portion. Slavchad was the firstborn, so he gets a double portion. Alma Eretz Yisrael Muchzakasi. So that shows us that since we attribute a Bechor portion to Tzlafchad, who was among those who left Egypt, but he died in the desert and did not come into Eretz Yisrael. So that shows us that the issue we brought up before, whether it's Muchzakes or not, whether the land of Israel was considered something that they already owned when they left Egypt. That shows us that that is the case, because Roy and Muchzak are different when it comes to Bechorah. When it comes to the double portion of a Bechor, something that has not yet come into the family's possession, but is owed to them or is seen as a future benefit, the Bechor doesn't get double of that. He only gets double from Muchzak, from something that's already held by the father before his death. Amar.
So how do you get 4 then?
Oh yeah, so so we talked about that yesterday, right? You make up some uncles. But the point here he's trying to demonstrate is that you only get the Bechor portions if it's considered Muchzak, right? It's considered something, Eretz Yisrael was considered something already owned by them when they left Egypt.
So he has the Bechor. He gets 2 and then plus 2 uncles.
Yeah. Amar. We said before in the Brisa, Habanim, the children of the Meraglim and of the Mislanim, so we saw already that those portions went to Yehoshua and Caleb. So what about the children of those people? Sure, their father's inheritance was confiscated, but their grandfathers, on both sides, they got the land that their grandfathers who left Egypt would have been entitled to. But another brisa says they got their own portions. So how do you understand that? Lokasha, not a problem. One brisa that says they didn't get their own portions. That accords with the view that it's the Yotzei Mitzrayim, those who left Egypt, that got portions. And the other brisa, which says they got through their own schluses because they entered Eretz Yisrael, so they were among those who got land that way. Or you could answer both brisas agree that it's those who came into Israel who got portions. If you think they were 20 years old or older, then they got their own portions. And the other brisa, which appears to disagree, is talking about the children who were younger than 20. So anybody younger than 20 didn't get their own inheritance. They had to rely on the inheritance of their grandparents.
But they did not get their portion, right? Because they were of the
right. But since there's Chazara and among the Bihars, you go back, you determine how many portions there are for each family, and then you go back to the Yotzei Mitzrayim and divide those portions up among all their um, their descendants. So then they get what's essentially their grandparents' portion.
But okay, to say that they gave Latzman, they didn't have a Skut Latzman, right? Because they themselves were not entitled to. They lost them to Kalev Yeshua,
Well,
right?
they themselves were entitled. The children of the Mislonim and the Meraglim, apparently they were in good standing. It's just that their father's inheritance was confiscated, but their grandfather's was not. So anything they got would have been through whatever their grandfathers, their
The
share of the
grandfather.
grandfathers.
No,
Yeah.
but they themselves did not receive, right? Their
Well,
children did.
one brisa says they did receive because through their own by their own existence, as it were, because they are members of those who came into Eretz Yisrael. And the other brisa thinks it's not because they came into Eretz Yisrael, it's because they were descendants of their grandparents who had a portion as well.
Wait a minute. Who came in there to say they did not? Didn't they die in the desert? So who are the
No,
Atzma?
the children of the
Oh, the
Meraglim.
children. Oh, the
Yeah,
children of them.
yeah, we're
Right.
talking about
Okay.
the children of the Meraglim, right?
Okay.
Okay. Now, going back to the Mishnah, we said V'shahay b'char notel shnei chalakim. So this idea that Benos Slafchad got a double portion because Slafchad was a b'char. V'yamai roihu. Now here the Gemara. This is what I was referring to before. That why would they get double of something in Eretz Yisrael which hadn't come into their possession yet? Roy, that's something that's roy. So as I mentioned, roy is something that you're going to get in the future, and muhsak is something you have already. And bechor, no till roy, muhsak. A bechor gets a double portion only in muhsak, and something that exists already in your possession, in the father's possession, but not roy, not something that's coming to you later, which what you would think is what Eretz Yisrael is. Amar Avila Amar Shmuel B'Yisdos Oalim. What did they get a double portion is? The not in land, but they got it's using as an example here, probably the tent pegs, right? Something that like they didn't have any land in the desert, right? But they had movable property. They had tent pegs, they had tents. So that's what they got a double portion in, but they actually did not get a double portion in the land. Masiv Rava, or Rava asks, Rabbi Hillel, not blue dalad chalakim shenem vayiplu chevle menashe asara. We have the source of this is from a pasuk in Yeshua, and it's called Chavle Menashe, the packages, the portions of Menashe, which implies to the Gemara that it's land we're talking about, not the Torah uses the word also Chavel Argov, right? The strip of land. So it's clearly when it talks about the 10 portions of Menashe, it's clearly referring to land, not to movables. Elam Rabba, so Rabba answers, yes, Bechor only gets double portion in something that's muhzak, but guess what? Eretz Yisrael has a special status, right? Perhaps because it was God's promise, but even though it hadn't yet come into their possession, it has a special status of muhzak, of something that you already own, even though it's promised in the future, and therefore a Bechor gets a double portion, and not not like other things that are roy. Meis asks from this brisa. Amar Rav Chidka. Rav Chidka said, Shimon Hashikmoni haya li chaber. I had a friend, a colleague, Shimon Hashikmoni, mitalmidei Rabbi Akiva, who was one of the students of Rabbi Akiva. Shimon Hashikmoni. This is what he said. Yodei haya Moshe Rabbeinu, shebenos Slafchad Yershasein. Moshe knew the law of the benos Slafchad, how they were to inherit. But so why? But the Torah says he went and he says, wait here while I go ask God. What didn't he know? What did he have to ask God? He knew that they were to inherit, but he didn't know if they got the double portion of a bechor. And really, the whole parsha of how daughters inherit didn't need the B'nos Slafchad for Moshe to write that. Moshe knew that. Because they were righteous people, the Dias of Slafchad. Therefore, they got honorable mention in the passage, and it was attributed to their question that this halacha was revealed. And similarly, there was another thing that Moshe Rabbeinu had to go ask God, and that was the Makoshesh Eitzim, the one who was cutting or gathering wood on Shabbos, and they didn't know what to do with him, and so Moshe had to go ask God. But Moshe knew that it's written in the Torah, Shadam, our Mechalal, most you must, someone who's Mechal Shabbos is put to death. What Moshe didn't know was what kind of execution he used. There are four types of execution that are given to the Sanhedrin, and Moshe didn't know which one applied to Chilul Shabbos. And really, the whole parsha could have been written by Moshe without reference to this particular incident of the Makoshesh. We want to, because this Makoshesh was a wicked person, therefore he's linked with this, like he's mentioned by name. Well, not by name, actually, we never do find out his name. But he's linked to this death penalty, and it was written with reference to him. To teach you, as we saw before, someone who has merits, we accumulate more merits for them. And someone who has guilt, has liabilities, we pile on the liabilities. Now, so
isn't there a source somewhere? I remember learning that this Mikoshesh Eitzim was Tzalafchad.
Oh yeah, there is a medrash like that, right? And I believe that the medrash says it in a meritorious way. In other words, he sacrificed himself to demonstrate, to clarify what the ruling would be, or something like that. Yeah. Interesting. I'd forgotten about that. Okay, so why did we bring this brisa? Who, if you think that Eretz Yisrael is something that is already in their possession, my komistakale, the rule is clear that Bechor takes a double portion from Muchzak. So if we say Eretz Yisrael is Muchzak, so what's Moshe's question? Right? He should have known. So Gemara says he gufa kamisapagala. That's exactly what Moshe was confused about, was uncertain about. Is Eretz Yisrael muchzak for the people in the desert or not? That's what he had to ask God. What's the source of this uncertainty? Torah says, "I'm going to give this land to you, morasha." Right? Now. How do we interpret this word, marasha? Yerusha hilachem yavosechem. Does it simply mean an inheritance, something that you got from your fathers? Which would mean that it's muhsak, right? That their fathers already had an interest in it. Maybe marasha means it's not something that you're going to inherit from your fathers, because it's not muhsak, right? So you don't get the double portion, but it's something that you can bequeath to your descendants. That's morasha. So that is the uncertainty. Upashule tarvayu. So God answered his question. Yerusha himi. It is both a Yerusha, something that you get from your fathers, umarishin v'enyon yarshin, and it also means that those that leave Egypt give the land to their descendants, but they don't get it themselves. And that is the meaning of the verse in the Shira. You'll bring them and implant them on the mountain of your inheritance. Excuse me. To Vienu lo namar doesn't say you'll bring us. Oh, to the Emo, you will bring them. These are the people at the Yam Suf. They're not getting a portion. Their children are getting a portion, so they're referring to other people getting this Yerusha. They didn't say this purposely, but by phrasing it that way, it turned out that they are demonstrating the actual halacha.
It's prophecy.
Yeah, yeah. Right?
So
It's like misnabi means that like you say something unwittingly that unwittingly reveals some, answers some question or reveals some truth.
they don't
Unwittingly.
even realize what they're prophesying.
Right, exactly. Okay. Moving
So
on.
it's as if it's something that's going to happen to their generation. They didn't realize that they would not enter the land of Israel.
It's true too. At the time, they probably had the expectation, certainly had the expectation, that they would be the ones coming into Eretz Yisrael. Oh. Okay. Now, Batamod lifnei Moshe lifnei Elazar Kohen lifnei Sim b'chol Veda. So the daughters of Tzlafcha, they stood before Moshe and Elazar and the princes and the Sim and all the people. Afshar Amdu lifnei Moshe v'lo Amar lahen davar. Like v'Amdu lifnei Nazim v'lo Eda. So what's happening here? They went to Moshe and Moshe didn't know. So they said, you know what? Moshe doesn't know. Let's go ask Elazar. He doesn't know. Let's go ask the Nasim. They don't know. Let's go ask. Let's go crowdsource this. Is that what happened? That makes no sense. Like Moshe is the ultimate authority, right? So once you ask him and he doesn't know, what are you going to go ask his
It's,
inferiors?
it seems
Ella,
backwards. You would think you ask the people first. They don't know. You ask the prince, then you ask Moshe.
exactly. Ella, sorry, Samik Rabbi Shea. That's what the Gemara answers. You have to reread it. You have to read it backwards, exactly like you say. In other words, first they went to the people, or that first they asked their friends, and then nobody knew, so they went and asked the Nasim. They didn't know. They went and asked Elazar, and then they went and asked Moshe. Divrei Yoshia, that's what Rabbi Yoshia says. Abba Hanan, Amar Mishum Rabbi Eliezer. Abba Hanan said, "The Beis Medrash Yoshvim." You know what? Everybody was already there in the same place. They were all in the Beis Medrash learning. So they go to the Beis Medrash. Everybody's there, and they ask their question. So they're asking their question to Moshe, but everybody is there listening to the question. Everybody was there at the same time. But my kamiflige. So what's their dispute? One holds that uh, you know, really, if Moshe was there, if everybody was in the base medrash and Moshe was there, they should have asked just Moshe. But no, they asked everybody. So that indicates that you can honor the student even in the presence of the master. The other says no, it can't have been that way because even if you say that they were all there together, it was still just said they asked Moshe. Why give credit to all these other people? So that's why he answers differently. Not that they were all in the same place, but that really they went up the chain, not down the chain. The and the halacha is that you do provide deference to a student in front of the teacher. V'hilchasa, but another report of the halacha is ein chalkin. Another report says that the halacha is you don't honor the student before the teacher. Kasha hilchasa hilchasa. So what does that mean? Like, what are you telling me? The halacha is this way and the halacha is that way. Hilchasa hilchasa kasha. Gemara says no. There's no contradiction. Aha, the polyglay Rabbi Yakara. When is the halacha that you accord honor to the student when the teacher is also giving honor to the student, right? But if the teacher is not giving deference to the student, then an outsider can't either. Okay.
How do you know that? How do you know if the teacher is?
Okay, you can observe. I don't know. There's probably multiple ways in which a teacher can show respect to the student, just in the way they address them, right?
Mm.
I mean, I can make up all kinds of things, but I think it's I think that's left open because it's open to interpretation. It's a subjective thing. How do you know if a teacher is giving respect to the student? Well, if he ignores his questions or speaks to him with disdain, then he's not. If he says, "Oh, that's a good question," or But whatever, you can
No,
imagine
I
for
understand
yourself.
that. I understand it,
Yeah.
but here it seems like the situation's a priori. They walked in and to ask a question. They didn't know if he was giving deference to student or not different. If you knew already, you were in the classroom, all right. But if they didn't know and they just walked in there, they didn't know that he had a relationship with that student, right? Then you don't know.
Yes, that's true. So so then I guess you would maybe you should wait and figure it out. I don't know.
Uh-huh.
If you don't know, it's not clear. Tana. We have a brisa. B'no Tzlachad Chachamani Yosein. The daughters of Tzlachad were wise. Darshani Yosein, and they could give a good drasha. Sidkani Yosein, and they were righteous. What's the source for all these? Chachmani Yosein, how do we know they were wise? Shalafisha, Dibru. They asked their question at the right time. Do you ever have Shmuel Bar Yitzchak? Moshe Rabbeinu Yoshe v'Darish b'Parshas Yevamim. When did they ask their question? Moshe Rabbeinu was teaching about Yibum, right? About levirate marriage. Shenamar Kieshu Achim Yachdav. He was talking about when brothers live together and one of them dies and has no son, then the widow marries the brother-in-law. Amrlo. So the daughters of Slavchad said to Moshe, "Im Kain Anu Chashuvi." Um, so so we as daughters, we clearly have significance because um, if our mother, who is widowed, um, um, she doesn't have to undergo yibum because she has daughters, right? So daughters have some significance like sons. So so then maybe we should also get an inheritance. In love to see, and if we're not significant, then maybe the halacha should be that our mother is subject to yibum. Then Moshe uh, took their question to God. Okay, so they were wise. They knew how to. I mean, what's the source of this? It's not clear. This is just you know, um, a drash of sorts. But whatever. This brisa, this legend, if you will, attributes wisdom to the daughters of Slacha. They knew when to ask their question. Darshani is saying, how do we know they gave a good sermon? Shahayu Amros, they said, Ilu hayalo bain lo dibarnim. If our father would have had a son, we wouldn't have said anything. Um, so so they're already getting into the the details of the of the issue, right? And they're demonstrating some depth of knowledge, I guess. Um, um, and they let's see, Vatanya Bas, but the Brisa said, but there's a Brisa that says that the Benos Lafchat said if he had a daughter, 1 second. Yeah, like this Bryson makes enough sense, right? That the that they said if our father had a daughter, we wouldn't complain, right? But they are daughters. Like, what is it talking about? So how do we understand that Bryson? Yeah, some mikan bas. Take out the word daughter. That makes no sense. Abaye Amar afilu hayabas labein lo dimarnu. No, what they're saying is if he had a grandson, a granddaughter, um, like we're only talking about daughters with no brothers. If we were granddaughters through a son, then we would have said, we don't get anything from Slafhan. Um, okay.
Because the granddaughter would have inherited. Because if she came directly from a son, right? The son goes through the son's
Right,
line.
right. And then the third statement was Sikanios, saying they were righteous. Shlonisu al lahagun lahan. They only married somebody from their own tribe, someone who they were recommended to marry. Because remember, they were told you can marry anyone, but there's a problem. If you marry out of your tribe, then that's an undesirable result because we don't want land to move from one tribe to another. So you should marry within your tribe, and indeed they did. Tani Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, Afilu katana shebehen lanises pechusa me'arbaim shana. Even the youngest of them didn't get married younger than 40 years. In other words, they waited that long to find the right husband from their own tribe. Like you have a smaller pool, so maybe it'll take you longer to find the right guy. Gemara says, is that right? Can it be that they waited till they were 40? Rav Chisda says, Nises pechusumi basasrim, someone who gets married, a woman who gets married below the age of 20, she's got 40 years of fertility. Basasrim, if she gets married after age 20, then she has 20 years. She has fertility till 40. Basarbaim, but if you don't get married until you're 40, Shuveni Yeladas, you're not going to have children anymore. So, like, how could they wait till they're 40? They're then giving up their chances of having children. They had confidence in their righteousness, and they knew that they would be rewarded like Yocheved, which we'll see in a minute, Yocheved, the mother of Moshe, that they would, even past the age of 40, they would still be able to have children. What's this about Yocheved? So when Moshe's birth is introduced, it says a man from Levi went and married a woman from Levi. That was Amram and Yocheved. Afshar bas mea shloshim shana v'karla bas. So Yocheved, she was already 130 years old, and you call her a daughter of Levi. So how do we know she was 130 years old? Diamar Rav Chami Rabbi Chama bar Chanina, Yocheved. When the Torah says that the Torah lists the family of Yaakov going to the land of Egypt was 70 people, but it only lists 69. Who was the 70th?
She was born when they were going through the walls.
Right, exactly. So the 70th, exactly. Yocheved was the 70th person. She was conceived along the way, and she was born ben hachamos, between the walls. In other words, as they entered Egypt. Yocheved is referred to as having been born to Levi in Egypt. She was born in Egypt, but her conception was outside of Mitzrayim. In other words, she was born as they entered Egypt. So she was 130 years old. My Karla, so why is she called a daughter? I mean, implying a young person. Amar Yehuda bar Zavina. She was rejuvenated. Nisadein habasar, her flesh became softer. Nispashtu hakamatim, her wrinkles smoothed out. V'chazar yofi l'komo, she became beautiful again. So she was rejuvenated. Now vayikach. So I think we've already answered the idea that the Bnei Slafchad were like Yocheved. Yocheved gave birth to Moshe, even though she was already 130 years old. So the Bnei Slafchad were confident that even though they got married after 40, and ordinarily, according to Rav Chisda, they would not be able to conceive, nonetheless, they were confident that they would be rewarded for their righteousness and be able to conceive. Vayikach, and just going on a little further with this, Vayikach, Amram took Bas Levi, he took this daughter of Levi, this Yocheved. Vayachzar miBa'alei, should have said he didn't marry her, he reconciled with her, right? He took her back because they had already been married, and Moshe had two older siblings, Miriam and Aaron. He actually did like a first marriage. Hoshiva Papirion, he sat her in a this chair, this throne, as it were, of a kala. The Aaron and Miriam and her two children, Aaron and Miriam, were singing. And the angels were saying, the mother of children is happy again. Like the mother of Aaron and Miriam is now smecha. She's been returned she's been reunited with her husband. And that is all for today.
Was that part of the story where the Amram and Yocheved separated because Paro said they shouldn't give birth to any more children, and then Miriam said, "No, that's not correct. You really should get back together." And then they
right. So then they had
Moshe. What?
That's that Paro only was going to was going to kill the men, the boys, right? Miriam says, if you don't have any children, what about the daughters, right? You're sure Paro is going to kill the sons, but if you separate, then you also won't have any daughters. You're doing even worse than Paro. But yeah, that's the medrash about their reunification. That's right.
And then they didn't, and then from the reunification, they gave
And
birth to Moshe.
Moshe, right? Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Have a good day, everybody.
Have a good day.